My name's Linda. I have a small permaculture farm on the outskirts of Motueka. I've been there for nearly 10 years. It was a kiwi fruit orchard when I bought the place, and I've taken out most of the kiwi fruit. I still have about 100 kiwi fruit vines in, and I've planted a mixed forest garden, and there's a whole lot of things in there. There's fruit and nuts and berries and vegetables and herbs and flowers and chickens and ducks and sheep and bees, and you name it, it's probably there. I think it's really cool. So I'm talking about permaculture, which is, in the context of a gardening club, is largely about gardening, although as you might see by the end of the presentation, it's not exclusively about gardening. Permaculture, what is it? It's a blend of the words permanent and agriculture. Bill Mollison, who with David Holmgren back in the 1970s coined the phrase and wrote the first book on the subject, said, "Permaculture is the conscious design and maintenance of agriculturally productive ecosystems which have the diversity, stability and resilience of natural ecosystems." So how do we do permaculture? Working in cooperation with nature to create sustainable and resilient systems that meet the needs of people and planet. Permaculture integrates land, resources, people and the environment through mutually beneficial synergies, imitating the elegant, no-waste, closed-loop systems seen in diverse natural landscapes. Permaculture studies and applies holistic solutions that are applicable in rural and urban contexts anywhere at any scale. And where? Everywhere. We can do permaculture anywhere. If you're farming in Alaska, or you've got a small backyard in Sydney, or wherever, the principles of permaculture apply wherever you are. So this is the why. Permaculture is based on 3 ethics. There's earth care, people care, and fair share, which was originally, according to Bill Mollison, about limits to population and growth, but over the last 50 years that idea has been dropped a little bit because it sort of reeks of eugenics a little bit. But there is a point in there about limits to population and growth. At what point do we have too many people on this planet? But fair share has been adopted as an easier way to deal with population and growth. It just means that the resources that are available to us, we need to share them fairly. Not so some people have all the resources and some people have nothing to eat today. Earth care and people care also are in equal value, equal importance. Permaculture doesn't state that people are more important than the planet, or that the planet is more important than people. They are equally important. So there are 3 ethics and 12 principles, and I'll just go loosely through the 12 principles for you with some little examples. The first principle is observe and interact. Take time to engage with nature to design solutions that suit a particular situation. Now this was a little avocado seedling that I planted about 7 or 8 years ago. And as you can see, it's not looking too well on this particular day. I observed, according to the first principle, that it was rather cold, and avocados don't really like the cold. And I also observed a few days later that it was dead. So that was a lesson in observation and interaction. In my interaction, I thought, well, if I plant another avocado tree, I'm probably going to have to protect it a little bit better. To be fair, this was an exceptional frost. As you can see, it's not just frost. There's icicles hanging off everything. But yeah, anyway, it and its 4 or 5 brothers that I'd also planted didn't survive. The second principle is catch and store energy. Develop systems that collect resources at peak abundance for use in times of need. And one way in which we do this at the Garden of Eden is with a compost toilet. We catch and store energy in the compost toilet. Everybody who comes here, all my woofers and visitors, they all make a deposit. And it's up a little hill. So on the right there's a little hill, and you walk up the hill to go to the toilet door, and then you make your deposit and it falls down. to the rotorloo at the bottom, and then it gets rotated while it composts, and then the bucket gets emptied into a compost bin, and a year later it gets put around the fruit trees. So that's a means of catching and storing resources. Number 3, obtain a yield. Now I'm guessing that most of you, being experienced gardeners, are quite good at obtaining a yield, whether it's flowers or vegetables or fruit or whatever it is that you grow. I took this photo on my birthday back in March. That was one day's yield that I obtained, and I just love the colours in that photo. Principle 4, apply self-regulation and accept feedback. It's one of the reasons I've got a camera here, because I'm accepting feedback and applying self-regulation, because I don't know what I look like up here. I could be looking like a complete twit, but I'll know when I get home and watch it later. Discourage inappropriate activity to ensure that systems function well. I woke up one morning to find my horse in this position. I don't know if you can tell, but most of her is through the fence in the forest garden where she's not supposed to be, and the night before I had left her in the track in the middle where the dog is. But during the night she decided that the grass wasn't good enough over there and she wanted that grass instead. So she somehow managed to get 2 feet and a head and a neck and a body and another foot and her backside and her tail through a fence and left one leg behind. Now luckily she's not a nervous horse, and she didn't panic, she didn't stress, she didn't throw herself around, which she could have easily done. She could have killed herself. A more nervous horse would have panicked being tied to the fence, but she was quite calm and she just stood there. I don't know whether she'd been there for 10 minutes or 10 hours, but she was waiting for me to get up and go and release her leg, which I did. So there was some self-regulation and feedback applied there. She learned that she really shouldn't be going through that fence. And I learned that I need to improve my fences. Number 5, use and value renewable resources and services. Make the best use of nature's abundance, reduce consumption and dependence on non-renewable resources. And one way in which we do this at the Garden of Eden is with woofers. Woofers are wonderful. Woofers come from all over the world, although we haven't seen so many of them in the last couple of years for obvious reasons. But they come and work on my farm in exchange for accommodation and food and learning and entertainment and whatever they want to learn about permaculture. And these 3 wonderful women are Carmen from Austria, Justine from America, and Denise from Belgium. And they're stacking up the kiwi fruit logs. When I took out some fruit, we saved the logs in the middle for firewood. It's a good, hard, dense wood, and it works really well. And so woofers are, and kiwi fruit for that matter, are a renewable resource, although as I say they haven't been quite so renewable lately. And I make the most of them, and they offer something to me and I offer something to them. And a good working relationship usually develops. Number 6, produce no waste. Value and employ all available resources, waste nothing. So that was one reason why we don't burn all the kiwi fruit stumps, because they make good firewood. It would be a waste to just stack them in a heap and smoke out the whole neighbourhood. Don't get me started on that subject. But another way in which we do this is this. So this is what my garden looked like a few years ago. And I had tons and tons of kiwi fruit vines that were the laterals. So those of you who know about kiwi fruit orcharding will know that there's a trunk that goes up about this high, and then there's laterals that go out like this, and there's wires all the way through them because the vines have grown along wires. And because of the wires, you can't chop them up with the chainsaw and use them for firewood. It's just not possible. You'd kill your chainsaw 100 times. So what we did was dig a big hole with the help of this rather large digger and throw all the wiry parts of the kiwi fruit into it, and then we covered it up with the soil that came out of the hole. And if you think back to that photo of the compost toilet, the hill on this side of it, this is the same hill. Another way in which I do it, I don't have a photo of this, is by accepting green waste from the community. I build up a lot of, I like building up the soil in my place. It gives me more resilience against drought and against floods and even against fire for that matter. So we're building up the soil as much as possible. It's very stony soil where I live, and the green waste that people bring in from the community when they're mowing their lawns or they're sweeping up their leaves or they're pruning their hedges or whatever, all adds to the depth of the soil and the quality, the fertility of the soil. There are lots of different ways you can apply permaculture principles in your own life and in your own garden.